live from the Pathway Studios in Johnston proper. You are live from the Path.
And you're listening to Live from the Path. We're coming from the Pathway Studios here in Johnston proper.
This is Mike. It's nice to meet you.
Hey.
Okay. So
I don't have any friends, Ben.
No. Yeah, that's not my.
Dear Live from the Path.
Not my problem.
I don't have any friends.
I'm your friend.
No.
No. Oh,
Yeah.
This is awkward.
aren't you in like? Okay,
I used to think you were my friend.
apparently not. This is awkward.
Yeah, it is. So, okay, here's what we got going on the show tonight. Hey, so I got some bad news, boys.
What?
But Mike, did you stop anywhere on the way into the show tonight?
I did not know.
So, the quick trip down the line. So if you we broadcast here in Johnston.
Yeah.
You get off the interstate at the Myrtle Hill exit. You could you head north, like you're going to go into where we're going to broadcast, and there's a quick trip right there.
Yeah.
I mean, this has been my place.
It's been a go-to place.
I love it there. They got roller dogs on the hilt.
They got a fast debit machine, right? So, like, when you go to pay for your goods, they don't even bother running it debit anymore. You just put the card in, it runs it automatically credit, takes like 2 seconds.
Yeah, they don't even care.
They don't ask you to confirm the total. They
No.
don't ask you if you want money back. They don't ask you if you have a rewards program.
it's
They're
pretty
just
quick
like,
living.
Ding,
Yeah,
it's
you're in and out. They
Yeah.
got to be honest, it's hard to find a place that has decaf on the brew this late at night. They always got it. They got decaf ready to go.
All right. So what's the bad news?
It's open for one more day.
What?
It's as of tomorrow, 2/18 is the last day, and it's closed, and that's it.
Oh,
It's going to be something else, though.
Are they-
It's going to be another.
I thought it might be a Quick Star.
Yeah, Quick Start. That's
Oh,
it.
okay.
Oh,
now,
really?
Here's the deal.
We're back in business,
Quick
boys.
Star is straight up all right.
Yes,
Yeah,
they
it is.
are.
Yeah, it's a
All
good
right.
joint. But I will say that many a night either I've spent inside the Quick Trip or like we've run into folks outside the Quick Trip, and or we've been talking outside the Quick Trip. Like anyway, it was a good joint, and I'll tell you this about the Quick Trip. I don't know how close you are to gas stations, but I would say this: that Quick Trip was the first in line of the next generation of gas stations. They were the first guys to fully light the place. Everyone else was trying to get away with yellow lights or like 2 or 3 lights in the parking lot. Quick Trip went lights ablazing. The city is up. Okay, now everybody's doing it. Everybody's on tap for it, except for Get and Go. Get and Go refuses to reel it
I
in.
don't know how Get and Go's still in business.
really
They
don't.
are the worst gas
They
station
sell
ever.
3 types of candy and 1 soda, and that's all that's in that store.
I'm pretty sure their home office is Bogota. Like the only way that they're open. Hey,
They're in Colombia.
Here's the steal.
They still manually put in the prices.
Yeah,
They don't even have a scanner. They type
Really?
in the prices every time.
and they still tag them. When Little Debbie shows up delivering her goods, they go.
They
Oh,
get
that's
to-
true.
Yeah.
They do have the orange paper that stickers onto it.
Even
That's
like the one in
hysterical.
Ankeny?
Yes.
Yes,
Absolutely.
Everyone.
That's like a new one.
Yeah,
Doesn't
they've
that-
built brand new Get and Go's, and they still don't have a scanner. They still manually type in all the prices.
That's because Bertha's in charge of that
Yeah,
part of
they-
the corporation.
They
And-
built a new building and then put employees from 1984 into it.
And they only
Looking
staff
for a
they
1984
only staff
woman.
one guy in most Get and Go's, and so like when he has to poop, he writes a note. The guy that I get in Bondurant is super honest. He's like, "I gotta poop. Be back in 5 minutes." Leaves a note right on the thing, and there you stand and wait till he's done in the number 2 area.
That and most of the time, the guy who works there is the Get and Go's best customer.
Yeah.
It's the guy who buys the most cigarettes from the place, the guy who takes all the lighters, and then every single one of the weird cigarellos that everybody knows what they do with
That's
it.
right. Air
He knows
fresheners and
exactly
Bush
where
Light.
they- Yes.
Yeah, that's it. That's the guy.
Hey, I'm Ted.
I'm missing out a big part of life.
No.
Actually, no. You're,
No,
you're
you're
keeping
staying
a
away
lot
from
more
the
money
right
in your
things.
wallet. Is
Yes,
what
you
you're doing.
Yeah. So anyway, I will say this I think the world has moved on without them. Everyone's picking up, but to my dollar, Quick Trip was the first to get this thing right. Like they went fast, convenient. They did well lit, decent bathroom. Place is generally well stocked. And the first to try to start creating a lot of their own goods.
Yeah.
And now again, Casey's is monopolizing. You got to Hy-Vee gas, and then Quick Star. I mean, Quick Star is out of this world. It's
Yeah.
a fantastic organization.
I don't know how they do it.
No,
Like,
I
they
don't either.
confuse me.
They're good. Like, is there 8 people on staff all the time?
Right.
I
And like
just-
4 of them are in the kitchen, and they'll bring you out exactly what you wanted. If they see you go for it and it's out, They'll like pop their head out and just be like, "Hey, man, I got that coming. It'll be 2 minutes."
Philly cheesesteak. Hang on.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
kind of don't like the Quick Star though.
Why, Dan?
Dan, you should leave.
I should. Oh, here's the deal. They've hurt me.
What?
They hurt me bad.
How did they hurt you?
What was it? Exo 204, I believe it is. I had a whole series of gumball machines there, and it was a good one. It was worth the drive just to get those gumballs.
Yeah.
It was good. And one day they called and said, "Hey, we want these out." I'm like, "Okay." And when I showed up, someone had thrown them away.
Oh no.
What?
Yeah.
I bet there's no recourse as a gumball man. Say, look, you owe me
like,
$150.
Talk to our corporate lawyer. Okay.
Boy, I bet he would outschool you pretty fast. Yeah, this is Dan, the gumball guy.
And this is like, there's a whole hallway that was filled with all kinds of stuff and machines and stuff, and they just decided to get rid of everything. And little boy me, I was one of them.
Boy, that's too bad, actually.
Man,
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't sour me on the Quick Star, but
no,
still.
unfortunately-
it might sour me.
Yeah, I mean, you were done wrong. That's
yeah,
certainly true.
They owe me money.
Okay.
I'm gonna get some gas and run off.
Did you?
I'll show them.
All right.
I could do that at Get and Go. They probably don't have video. Of
No,
cigarettes.
they don't.
No.
There's
They
just
got a
dude
guy
out
that-
there with a.
Yeah, there's just a dude that stands out by the gas,
Hey,
and
you.
he's got a piece of paper and a
Stop
pen. And if he by chance catches your license plate, then in a couple of months they'll call you.
I'll leave by a note after when I drive off and say, "See Quick Star."
Yeah, exactly. You're gonna start some weird gang war between the oldest and worst gas station and possibly the newfangled cool people.
I'm pretty. So I went in Minneapolis. The Quick Star is called the Quick Trip, but it was with K's, and so I drive to Minneapolis all the time. I ended up stopping at this Quick Trip to get gas, and they were having a special on their donuts, and I'd never had a donut at the Quick Star, but they had like a dozen or 6 donuts for like 99 cents,
Yeah.
some kind of gangbuster special.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I pick it up and I'm like, I'm gonna have one of these donuts.
Death in a
I mean,
box.
one of them is like 80 cents, so I thought I should get that. I ate all 6 donuts.
Absolutely. The
Before I
Dunkers?
got home. Yeah.
The
I mean,
Dunkers.
that was a mistake. But they were really good. Really good.
Hey, man, I was in eastern Indiana like 5.5 hours ago, and I went to a place called Speedway,
Yeah.
which
Oh,
is
yeah.
the gas
Yeah.
station out there.
They're
That
big
place
out
is
there.
terrifying.
Yeah.
That was a worse version of the Get Go.
Oh, really?
It's like
That's-
a Valero. Valeros are
Yes.
rough.
Oh my gosh! Isn't there only one of those left in Des Moines?
Yeah. I
Like
think
it's
they actually
randomly
go
over on
through and
Easton?
put in like yellow shades in the lights just to add it to more.
add
It looks
creep.
like you just got on parole, right? Like you get out to get gas and you're just on fresh on parole and you're hanging around all your old friends. That's what Valero feels like.
Oh, that's the truth.
I don't even know about this place.
I didn't even know it was.
Valero?
I didn't know it was open and running when I went past there, and it was almost out of gas. And went in there the one time in my entire life, and I was like, I think I'd rather run out of gas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where's this at?
There's a Valero still, I think, over on the east side.
Yeah, there's one in Easton.
Yeah, Easton.
Yep,
That's exactly
there's
what
one
it is.
right over in Easton by the old Kmart.
Yep.
It's where they have like the
Just down the street from the Kmart.
the non-packaged beef jerky box.
Yeah.
You know, where you lift open the lid and take
Yes.
beef jerky out of it.
It's like, I'm sorry, whose meth head's hands been in there? Like, that's terrifying. I'm
Sorry
going to
about the
contract all the
coronavirus.
heps
Yeah.
from just putting my hand in there and grabbing the meat stick.
Yeah.
It's a terrible decision.
I didn't realize we must be at the height of cold and flu season, right? I tried to. This lady I was talking to today, I had to fill out this form, and she gave me the piece of paper, and she had a pen in her hand, you know. So I take the piece of paper and I try to grab the pen out of her hand, and she won't let it go. And I thought maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe I put the girly arm on it, and I got to re-grab it. So I go back after it. She goes, "Oh, you'll be using your own pen. It's the height of cold and flu season."
Oh, man.
I'm like, "Oh, well, that was
Using your
embarrassing."
That is
pen,
strict.
sir.
Excuse me, can I get that pen? Absolutely not.
No, you can't.
You walking cesspool.
This is even better. So they give me a security badge to be at this place, you know. And I go through this whole rigmarole. It takes like 45 minutes an hour. And I get the badge and I say, okay, this badge will open doors, right? I just need to be able to get these couple places. And she goes, oh yeah, it'll work, but it won't work until you get your flu sticker on there, your cold and flu sticker, or that said you had a flu shot for this year. And I'm like, the what? Yeah, the flu sticker. It has to be on there, otherwise the card won't work. And I go, what kind of fancy sticker is this? Like, has it got biometrics in it, like a magnetic sticker? And so she shows me an example. It's a regular sticker. So I don't know whether she's been lied to or she's lying to me. But that sticker doesn't do nothing, you know?
You got to be dumber than a box of rocks to believe that just a regular sticker is going to make something work.
Yeah, so being...
Hey, when you're a kid, a sticker does magic.
I
mean-
totally should have put like a gold star on the back of it. Be like, I got a sticker now.
I totally bypassed the sticker. I went right back to what I was doing, and I was able to get indoors, and I thought, I ain't going to no sticker lady.
Nope.
That's phenomenal.
All right, so here's what I heard this week. There was listening to a podcast, and I don't catch a lot, but there was an interview with Derek Webb. Do you guys remember who that is? He was
the guy that was that he's renounced Christianity, right? He was a Christian music guy, right?
That's right. That's
Okay,
right.
yeah.
He was a Christian dude. He was in Caedmon's Call, and then there was a lot of his music that I really liked. And he's one of those guys who felt like he could talk about the church honestly. Now, here's the risk. Every time you find a guy who feels like he can talk about the church honestly, I'd say half them guys end up bailing on the church because they can't handle. There's a power in saying, "Hey, man, we're not doing this well." Even if you're right, you become self-aggrandized, a prophet in your own eyes, right? And so, whatever happens to this dude, he ends up getting divorced, and then again, I don't know the man, but either as part of that or an outfall of that, whatever. He ultimately leaves the Christian faith. He calls it deconstruction. Like losing all the faith and stuff that you build out up over time, you've constructed into a way that you deal with the world and your the way that you see things. And deconstruction is trying to basically get rid of all those things that have piled on top of you to get down to the real you. False premise, right? Like the real you can't believe in the Lord. But in either case, that's kind of the deal. So anyway, I was listening to he did an interview with a group of folks who are basically in the same bucket. They're all deconstruction folks. And but there were some interesting things that he was talking about that I thought I'm interested to hear what you guys think, because one of the things that he comes off as is super enlightened, because his basic deal is he'll say, "Look, I don't care if you're a Christian. I mean, what would I care? I don't, if that's what you believe and that changes and it makes a difference in the world and what causes you to do otherwise good things, why would I care that you're a Christian?" He goes, I don't have, one of the things that he says he's given up is really just certainty. So like I'm willing to believe things, but he feels like he won't ever have certainty again on either faith related things or a lot of different stuff. And so what that kind of sounded like, if you guys remember some of the stuff that we've seen from the Barna Group on like the rise of the nuns, this actually of like people who don't have a religious affiliation, this seems a little bit different to me, because it's a sense of a spirituality, but it's not one. It's totally undefined. And it sounds super agreeable, super libertarian, right? I don't care what you think. That's totally fine as long as it's not harming anybody else. Like, we're totally cool with this. So my question is to this is, one, I think it's answerable, but I'm interested in what you guys think. But secondly, what is the impact? What are the earthly consequences of someone going being spiritually libertarian, saying, "Look, I don't care what you believe. I'm open to it. I'm cool if you're cool." It seems to me that there's earthly consequences to that, even if I remove their personal salvation or something like that. So, like, I don't know. What do you react to when you hear something like that?
I mean, broad strokes would be, and of course this is coming from our worldview, right? But like, if I believe that there's a creator God who made the world to run in a certain way, or knows the way that it runs best, and then I say, I don't care whether you participate in God's design for the world, then I'm basically saying I don't care that this world runs best, and frankly that there is even a best, right? Like, what kind of, we don't have a moral authority to agree on. Then I mean, it really is to say, like, it seems like someone would be lax about that if like, hey, I don't care if you're a Hindu or a Buddhist, but what if you're a Hindu who murders people? Now I kind of care, right? Like, what if I say I don't care if you're an extreme Islamist, right? Like, who terrorizes people. You act like it's okay as long as people are still within a certain reasonable bounds that is commonly accepted, right? Like, if we're not killing each other, if we're not promoting stealing for each other, or it's okay to make yourself better than somebody else as long as you don't actually hurt the person or whatever. So, like, it's easy to say that as long as it's backed up by the context that it's still within this set of boundaries that we're going to accept, right? Because put on its true face that says, I don't really care what you believe. If you're cool, I'm cool. So your, quote, religion or whatever believes that it's okay to just take whatever you want, have 17 wives, even if one of them don't belong to you, and then kill a guy. And so you don't actually believe that. You're sacrificing all reasonable thought and reasonable morality because you want to be enlightened, right? And I don't think you can have that both ways. You can't have the assumed fence. The fence is kind of drawn from the Creator. We have the fence at all because the Creator instituted the fence when He created it, right? And so, like, yeah, we've strayed from it to various degrees as the world has gotten has aged. But most of that the moral fence that exists is because God put a thin black line in the middle in the first place. And so without that at all, I find it really hard for you to say that you can just accept what everybody else is doing because they're still operating within those guidelines.
Yeah, it's difficult to bail on this objective. Let's just, here's the thing: to bail on objective, you're ultimately bailing on objective truth, because to just say, "Well, you believe what you believe, and I will believe what I will believe," implies that my belief never expresses itself in some form of reality, right? Like you say, oh, like what do you do? An article I shared with the fellows this week, because I thought it was kind of cool. Francis Chan was in Myanmar, right? And he said there were people, he was there to talk to people about Jesus, and there were people that were healed, like young children that were healed, and like multiple that were healed by his touch, laying his hand on and praying. And this is Francis Chan. It's not like he's been unsuccessful, or that you wouldn't say, the man appears to be living a faithful life to Jesus. And he goes, this is the first time I've ever even seen anything like this. Never happened in my life, right?
52 years old.
Right. So here's the thing. Take that for what it is, but there's a blind kid in Myanmar who's no longer blind. What Francis Chan believes about Jesus Christ has an objective reality to it. Mm-hmm. What happened with that kid? I was thinking about that story yesterday. I almost called the newspaper. That seems like a 1960s thing to do. But like, but what I thought is I was going to pose as someone who was outraged that he was telling these falsehoods, so that they would go investigate it and come back and go, we have no explanation for this. I thought that would be fantastic, because it's this type of thing. Like when we talk about the conversations about the reality of Jesus and the nature of faith, these types of things are happening. And like that'd be a heck of a story for someone to go investigate and go, look, man, I tried to disprove this thing, but the freaking kid was blind. He's no longer blind. And the only thing that we know happened was a man who loves and serves Jesus has no inkling of going there for riches or whatever. And the situation changed. And so the point being is, when we take our hands off and say, oh, I don't care if you believe in your fake God as long as I can believe in my fake God. But the thing that I believe has an objective reality.
Right.
And so you can't just dismiss that as if it's just a matter of personal preference. And the truth is that when people are representing that, like, I'm cool, I live on a bucket of maybes, I don't live on any certainty. I'm like, well, what the heck, man? I think you're being disingenuous. How does that make your wife feel? Yeah, I love you. I mean, maybe. I don't like to get into this certainty bucket.
You don't need to love me.
Oh, right. Right. Like, and so here's the thing. You are certain about some things. There are some things of which you feel very strongly, of which would cause you to react in one way or another, to defend something one way or another. Like, it's just in the nature of the conversation about God. I'm okay with an I don't know, because I think Jesus is cool with someone seeking, someone searching for that information. But like, there's an implicit judgment, especially when someone leaves Christianity and looks at this and goes, "Oh, you fools have been clumped into this for so long, and I've deconstructed the thing." And I get it. Like, just because you don't act that way, like there's a piousness when people leave the faith and they look back. But their piety is in their own belief system, right? That like, oh, at least I'm not caught up believing that same thing that you people still believe. Even if it produces good things in your life, I'm glad about that, but boy, it doesn't take that for me. And so you still believe in something. It's just your moral system is guided by you. You're just not submitting to something bigger. You're like, well, I won't be controlled by this particular set of mores or laws or whatever anymore.
Right.
And so if it's just, as long as I feel like you're just, and generally where people end up is like, as long as you're not harming another human. I mean, gray area, bud. Think of all, I mean, people totally misinterpret what it is to harm another person. The standard of Jesus is pretty high. Most other religions are pretty iffy on what I would consider on how you're able to treat other people. There's nothing that talks about the levels of forgiveness and self-sacrifice and humility than Christianity. And so here, if it's wrong, then I'm okay with it being objectively wrong. I've not seen it. But I think it's just disingenuous to act like what we believe can be totally disassociated from objective reality. It is not a fact. It's just not true.
So when I was a kid, my parents used to make milk toast. And that's probably from them being like Depression era people.
Yeah.
And so they would make toast, and then they'd rip it into little pieces, put it in a bowl. They'd heat up milk, warm milk, and they'd pour warm milk over it, little sugar over it, and I'd take a couple bites, and it was actually kind of tasty. It was good. I mean, it's sugar bread, right? And so when the bread was still a little bit crispy, so for about 45 seconds, it was kind of fun. But after that, it's just a big bowl of slime with little lumps in it, where it's not all been slimized.
Gross.
I think that's what this guy lives. That's where he lives, in that bowl of slime.
The
He
slime
that's
milk
all.
toast.
Yeah. What?
The slimy milk toast.
The slimy milk toast. Because I mean, although it was fun once in a while as a kid, it's like I sometimes I want a French fry, or I want something crispy, or I want an onion ring, or a steak, or something. And if these guys are living in the milk toast, that's all they. It's like, oh yeah, whatever. It's all just gushy. Yeah. And that gets gross really quick. I couldn't live there.
I was actually thinking about that when you were bringing it up. Is do you think that the nuns, the segment of people that have said, I don't know, I just have no idea, I'm not associating with any of this, do you think some of that comes from the multiple sources of what people get information anymore, and their mistrust of where it's coming from? Like, the church has just become swept up in what is a normal problem for us, because, like, I can tell you right now, I don't have one news source that I trust. I think they all screw with me. I don't think anybody's actually telling me the truth, or at least the whole story, right? Like, they'll give me like 75% and then leave 25% out to let it go either way that they wanted it to go, right? And so, like, just as being a organization that passes information, is it possible that, like, everybody's skeptical of everything that they hear anymore because they're assuming you have an angle, right? They know that walking in, if someone were coming to your church, they know that your angle is to get them to come with you, right? And, like, so they automatically mistrust the fact that you have an angle. And so, like, the deconstructionist guys are looking for a plateau to take on other nuns and go, I don't have an angle. I don't need an angle. I'm not asking you to do anything or go anywhere. So but the thing is like the deconstruction, like that thought process there, people who don't have an angle don't give a crap about you. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, that is the definition of a bad parent. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have to teach you to do anything. I'm not worried whether you do well in school. I'm not worried whether you have good manners, or whether you follow Jesus, or whether you tell lies. You just kind of do whatever you want. I'll be okay if you're okay. You're a terrible parent. And you're also a terrible human being. If you don't care enough about somebody to make sure that they're not doing something wrong or stupid, then you're living a completely intrinsic lifestyle, right? And maybe that's the downfall, right? Like, if everybody's okay, as long as they're not bothering me and I'm not bothering you, that basically shows a legitimate, I don't give a crap about you.
Hey, man, and if I'm to believe most of what I see coming either out of social media, even modern news outlets, especially around sociology and psychology, friggin' no one is under the impression that they're okay. And so your live and let live type of business where it says, well, I've got my moral high ground here, and I assume that you got your ship under control. As a matter of fact, that's the one thing that continues to hit me probably once every 3 months, is often I look out in the world and I'm like, I mean, these people have been exposed to the same information I've been exposed to. And they're just making their choice based upon that. That's ridiculous. It's not true. The vast majority of people that I know, and this is even religion aside, have come to a conclusion that has not been an informed decision. They're not. They don't check into things. They've not really studied it. There had whatever. Boov asked me a question this week about someone's protest against a house church, and I thought it was embarrassing. This protest. It was stupid. No one had even thought like. And that's not even because I run a house church. It's because I looked at it and go, that's not even close to biblically sound. Did you put two thoughts into it at all?
Right.
And so, like...
You saw a word.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone goes to the temple. So, I mean, your house churches are ridiculous. I'm like, you go to the temple, friend? I thought not. Okay, then. So, but the point is that, like, people hold all kinds of opinions that are not grounded in any sense of research.
Even on what they wear. I mean... No one researches jeans. They just go, hey, people think these are cool.
Yeah, right.
I'll spend
Only to find out,
$150 on it.
And then here comes, like, Johnny Do-Gooder, like, 6 months later. I'm like, oh, you bought Levi's jeans? Levi's funds abortion. Oh, man, what? What am I going to do? I mean, what do I got to research? Oh, yeah, they test that on animals. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I just bought a shirt, and I'm like, look, it fits me. And they're like, yeah, that company promotes murdering Ugandans. Oh, you got to be kidding me. I had no idea.
So that's the thing, is that, like, it is a callous thing to look out into the world and go, yeah, boy, I respect you enough to leave you to your own devices. Like, I get it. They're fighting it. They're hedging against an opposite risk, which is someone looks out on the world and goes, "I'm way better than you. Wait till I change your life." And to the extent that a Christian has been the person who's propagating that, shame on them. That's not following Jesus. And so, fine, let's agree to that. But it doesn't mean that you look out to the world and you see people who have a genuine need, me included, and don't go, boy, I would do whatever I can to bring help to that. And I can only help with true things. Like, no one wants you to show up to a group of starving children and tell them lies about food you don't have. Now, spiritual hungry people who have a sense of loss or who don't know whether this is real or not, why the heck would I show up and go, yeah, look, I mean, I don't even know if this is objectively true. It's just what I feel in my tinglers, and maybe you could feel it in your tinglers too, and then we can tingler together. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's an objective reality to it. Like, it's so goofy. I just think it's disingenuous, and what it makes it sound to people who have that conversation, it makes it sound that you're just so loving and enlightened because you wouldn't want to press anything on anybody. And here's the deal. We're not dragging anybody into heaven. Jesus is inviting people in to live with him forever. If that is not a good proposition to you, there are alternatives.
Yeah.
However, I'm certainly, to the extent that my fallible human heart, often doubting, often who needs help in his unbelief, will still say, look, from everything that I know and have seen, freaking kids are getting healed in Myanmar, and lives are being changed, and the personal presence of God himself I have felt and known in my life, and it's validated time after time. And so I tell you what, I don't know everything about the world, but I can tell you what I know, and this is what I know, and it's objectively true. And at least let's deal with that as opposed to putting on the same level your tinglers versus something that is otherwise borne out in objective reality. That's where I get frustrated, because I think it's intentionally it's made to sound pious on the opposite side, and I think at its best it's disingenuous. But I'll tell you something interesting about the conversation, because as is his deal, he said a number of things that were super true, and I thought were pretty relevant. Because he said one of the things he was talking about worship artists, and he said, you'd be surprised at how many of those people don't their faith is a lot more complicated than what their songs sound like or what they do on stage. He said, but people come for an experience from them and their songs, and so they meet and people get a good experience from it. And I'm like, I don't like that. But it's probably true.
Yeah, but I mean, what kind of person has to tell it's just like the Gospels, right? Like they're formed in a way for a reason. They're organized the way that they are, to tell a particular story, right? Like no one writes Oceans and goes, sometimes I'm below the waves and I don't come up, and I see the boat and I don't care about the boat and I stay down there anyway because I'm angry when oceans rise, right? Like. That's not why that song was written. There's plenty of honest songs out there that say, look, I'm a stubborn sinner who doesn't understand the boat, and the boat keeps showing up, and I am awed that it comes back even when I throw graffiti at it and garbage, and I say, I don't want your stupid boat, yet the boat returns, and I get on it, right? Like, there's plenty of other things that are like that, but like some of the songs he's talking about, they're worship songs. They're they're all true things about God, despite coming from imperfect people. You don't have to asterisk every line in a worship song to make it valid, right? Like Amazing Grace. Not to me, I don't deserve it. I think it's terrible, and actually I don't listen to it all the time. How sweet the sound when I hear it, when I'm not putting my fingers in my ears and sitting like I do all the time, right? Like that's not necessary.
No, okay, that's fair. That's fair. And I think, frankly, where it's right is that it's the risk of a broad scale of not close congregation influence of song and teaching. It's not wrong. It's just it's the risk of it, right? Like you don't get to sit in a close space to have the context of their life or their thought process that go into the song. I don't think it's necessary, actually, because to the truth, the fact that it's valid, that it's a true thing, it properly reflects God. That you could have think of the most outrageous person in your life, and you're like, who doesn't love Jesus at all. If they wrote a song that was true about Jesus, I don't feel like I have any constraint of singing it. If it's accurate, what do I care?
That's the thing. I'm super interested in the list he's talking about, right? Like, because I mean, I know a lot of Jesus tunes. I know a lot of Christian music in general, and most of them paint God correctly and themselves correctly. Like, I don't hear a lot of songs glorifying the guy, right? It's always worship to God.
No, I think his point is to say they're writing songs that otherwise fall into line with mainstream Christian theology, but their belief system is much more complicated. Whatever, take a guess. It's probably matters of sexuality, probably matters of government and government structure. Like, whatever, the brand of...
Is he trying to say that, like, the world's more complicated than the Christian music is making it out to be? Or I don't understand. I don't understand the point.
You say they're not your typical Christian like you think they are.
Yeah, correct.
So ultimately, the people that are writing these songs, they may say this in their songs. They may seem devout and like they believe everything that's in their songs, but when it comes to their actual faith and their actual belief systems, it's not as cut and dry as their songs make
Rich
it seem
Mullins
like
was
it is.
basically an alcoholic, you know, and struggled, but he was pretty vocal about it, and
Yeah, fallible people wrote most of everything so far.
Right.
The Psalms were up and down constantly.
Yeah, right.
The
Show
Psalms,
me anything out of David
Yeah,
and go,
exactly.
hey, man, this guy
Bring
was...
that man
oh.
down.
Right, yeah, exactly. The Psalms that exalt God to exactly who he was and tell exactly who he was towards his enemies, towards us, and towards things like that. They're not lost because David was a messed up guy.
Yeah, so I think the distinction, if I can help him make it, is there's a difference between an open and honest David and Fanny Crosby.
Yeah, so
And-
you have to read David's entire works
Right, yeah,
to
exactly.
get that, though.
Yes.
Which is, I think, is the point. Is that the context? Some of which our modern means of taking in information allows us to not. We're not likely to get the whole context. Now,
absolutely.
here's the thing. I'm not sure that I care.
yeah.
But I think the point is that, like, what seems like a universality on what people believe is a lot more complicated than that. But here's the thing: I don't know anybody that's met any Christian anywhere that doesn't have the semblance that people are a lot more complicated than that.
Right.
And why is the onus not on the guy listening, right? Like, if you think that there aren't anybody on the Bethel worship team that smokes, drinks, or struggles with pornography, you're an idiot.
Right.
You're
I
an
was just going
idiot.
to bring them up because there's a lot of pushback against Bethel right now.
That's right.
Right?
Because they are false doctrine in their church.
Yep.
But gosh, some of their worship songs are pretty nifty.
Yeah.
And exalt God.
And to the
That's
extent
my
that they're
1950s lingo.
Nifty.
They're really nifty.
to the
Man,
extent
they've got
that they're
some
true.
music.
They really tingle my spine.
I was going to call the paper. And to the extent that was always been my thought with places like Bethel and Hillsong, like to the extent that the song accurately reflects God and accurately reflects humanity. Whatever, I'm not in the middle of whatever sorting that stuff out,
Right,
but
right.
I don't find any reason to boycott true things about God simply because they came from sinful people who are probably misguided.
Like
no, and I
David.
think to his point, I think I would understand that, considering the fact that, like, when we to call it mainstream Christianity, we deify a lot of the people that are involved in churches. We deify pastors that are big name pastors. We deify the people that are the worship band leaders and all this kind of stuff.
That's all
we know
turned
their
out well,
names.
isn't it?
Yeah. Right, yeah, exactly. Literally, how many of those stories end up in a oh no? But yeah, absolutely, I can understand that entirely. If we look to them as they are more important than the Christ that they offer, then of course they're going to be in situations where people will constantly believe that their belief system is infallible and they are constantly in a place where they're not human. That person runs a megachurch. There's no way that person sins. Or that person wrote that Amazing Grace song, even though that was like 200 years ago. There's no way that person sins. I can totally see where the person's coming from to make that argument that mainstream people or big people that we would expect to have great faith that don't waver in any way, shape, or form are some of the most interesting people when it comes to their belief systems.
But,
so I get where he's coming from with that and trying to make that like an argument that relates that he's not alone.
Well, sure, but I think that would be the point, though, is that, like, I'm not surprised that nobody's in this room was particularly surprised to find out that would be true.
I think that's a tough lesson to learn, though, and maybe it's everybody has to learn it at a certain time. Like, I was pretty naive in the very beginning of Christian music. I remember Amy Grant, and that she was one of the first. I mean, there were some before her, but really mainstream artists. And man, it hit me hard when I heard she had an affair, and like I just kind of gave up on her. It's like, no, you're not a Jesus person, because look at what you've done, and there's this. I was that guy. That guy who put her on a pedestal. I mean, she's representing me. She represents my faith. She's a great spokesman to the whole world. And no, you're not. And
right.
That was a big blow. And I suppose every generation has to figure that out with their current contemporary.
Yeah, absolutely.
stars.
Right. We think we got this new set that learned from the past, but the truth is, I mean, people have been doing these types of behaviors for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Well, like my girls were just shocked. Who's the comedian we talked
John
about?
Christ.
Oh, John Christ, yeah.
Yeah. It's just like, no, not him.
Come
They
on.
were,
Right, exactly. The whole concept of the
destroyed, but-
not him or not her is
Yeah.
where we get wrapped
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
Is the
We
no,
put
there's
our
no
faith
way
in
that
you,
person.
you know?
Yeah. Well, that's the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the absolute problem.
Yeah.
Is we put our faith in the people rather than the Christ they're bringing.
It's tough too, right? Because there's nothing wrong with finding because it's somebody that is on the earth right now that you can relate to, that you can look at and go, wow, I feel like they're doing this right. This is right.
Yeah.
I at least have something to look at and compare against and see what's what. Like, it's not like you can't source that from the Bible, but like when you see a guy
Of course.
doing it, that lives next door to you, you're like, heck yeah.
I would-
Yeah, it translates
it's great.
here too. Yeah.
I would
We
be
wanna be-
devastated to find out that Ren Collective, as an example, were like something was up.
Agreed.
I would be
Right.
devastated.
Yeah, I think I probably got a list of like 3 or 4 people that follow Jesus, like around me, that like if I were to find out something iffy, I would go, oh man, like I pulled a little string from them, right? Like never gave them like Jesus's
Right.
whole robe,
Right.
right? But like,
Right.
but like you could always check back in.
Yeah.
And Francis Chan is always giving up a megachurch and moving to like the poorest country in Africa. And you're like, yes, okay, this is alive, this is well, this is not me seeing Jesus where he isn't. My faith is alive and it's action and God is moving and like good. I always thought that was true about God, but it's just nice to be reminded that God is out doing things through other people.
And I don't think it's a problem to get emotionally invested in that and have that stake within that person and go, yeah, that's cool to see here.
Right.
I think when people draw that line, it becomes, well, they are what I have faith in versus Jesus. That's the problem. And I
Right.
don't think you guys are running into that. I think it's perfectly understandable to go, hey, they write great music. They seem like they're doing great. I check in on them. Francis Chan is again in the old town Siam, right? Like that's a cool thing to go on. But then people take that much further than you guys do.
Well-
People take that much further, and then it becomes a stumbling block for themselves with their faith because their faith is in that person rather than Jesus. And that's in the Bible. That's a problem to have that situation where we don't have we have faith in the man versus the God behind him.
I wonder if part of this is we all in this room have a kind of a shepherd's mind or a shepherd's heart, and the sheep don't. And the sheep, they just...
Everyone in
You're
this
my
room I
shepherd.
would say is a lot more enlightened than what I would call the checkbox Christian.
Yeah.
The person
I mean-
that says
I don't know. Geez, Booba. I mean, that
That's a
really
big word.
sounded real pompous.
I don't mean to
Well,
Better than you,
Okay.
I like to say.
Here's the deal. I think it's okay to say a true thing without it being pompous.
I
That
mean,
was
I don't-
exactly what a pompous man would say.
Yeah, you're right, and that's
I
fine.
mean, like I've never understood like how does let's say the rock band setting how does the girl want? I had a girlfriend who just would have loved to have opportunity to have sex with some famous band guy. And I'm like, you don't even know the dude, and you're like,
Right.
because you like his song, like, oh, it's the whatever player, I want to be with them. It's like, what, and I realize it's a whole different thing, but it's like
Right.
even in the Christian world, we're like, oh, not that I want to do that, but I just want to. I connect with them at such
Yeah.
a
Yeah,
high
of
level.
course.
It's like you
Right.
don't even know
I
them.
want them to know me.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, And then I'm highly disappointed. I mean, like, I was disappointed with the Bill Hybels thing, but at the same time, I'm like, you built a monster that wasn't really a Jesus. I mean, it wasn't really a scriptural thing.
Right.
It's a disappointment from, how many people he let down, but should he have let that? I mean, is it that big of a shock?
Right.
But
Right.
then I'm coming from our perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a guy, right? He's not the only guy I've ever met, right? That's walked away from Christianity and said, "I finally see this for what it is," and the truth of the matter is generally it's rooted in, I want more of me. I want more of me in this. I want more of my perspective on this thing, right? And all the true things that they thought they understood about God. They decided could be better replaced what they've been thinking over the last year, right? Like, I mean, let's be honest. You believe this thing for 35 years, and then year 36, something happened, and you've gone, well, from the information I've collected over the last year, I've now shifted my gaze to the right, and then everything on the left looks stupid now. And so it's a little disingenuous to say, it's arrogant, kind of what it is, right? Like we're looking at a religion just on a fact based, basis that has been around thousands of years. People are willing to die for it, and you cancel all that out in 1 year of trouble and woe. Mostly
I'm
because
tired of faking it.
mostly because
Yeah.
you interjected sin into your life and decided that you were tired of holding yourself to account. You were tired of putting it up on the altar and said, you know what, I'm just tired of feeling bad about this. And so I'm just going to continue to do it over here and then discredit everything up to this point.
Which is interesting because, like, I think that actually points to the nefariousness that does exist within the church, where people feel like that the church is not for them with things like that. Now, I don't think that's as true as most atheism attempts to make it sound, nor people that are just generally upset with the church. Broadly, I think a lot of the church is getting this right, but like you don't hear from the people where it's getting right. But like, is it true that there are places in Christianity where Amy Grant has an affair and we go, we're done? I mean, no, whatever, Dan. I'm not, but like, I mean, you get it right. Like the reaction is like, I'm so disappointed in this, and especially with people who have some sense of stature. And did we leave people room to be human, not in allowing them and celebrating the fact that they are fallible human, but basically agreeing with God's perspective on their humanity? And like, is that something that Christianity needs to be careful of? Yes. And the reason, it depends on the person, but a lot of times we get bundled up in that because I look at a Bill Hybels and I go, what the heck, man? You poison the name of Jesus for people who are looking for ammo, right? If there was an opportunity for someone, for every kid that gets healed in Myanmar, that two people might be able to hear about, 2 million people saw in the Washington Post that Bill Hybels abused his pastoral position in a mega church, touched a lady, and propositioned himself to people who didn't want it, while being married and running a pastor and a giant leadership conference. And so, yeah, you know what? I'm kind of pissed at you, and your humanity really sucks right now. One, because you've took that upon yourself. You're arrogant, and then two, I thought it looked like we were making gains over here. It looked like we were making some headway. Now, that's the part where my anger is not justified because they're not my gains. They're God's to handle. There's a reality to that man's sin and what he's done to other people. We should be able to bury his story by the millions of acts of kindness and love and faithfulness to God and showing of Jesus to the world.
That
and
is
we're
a great point.
We don't do that. Well, I mean, it won't play, but here's the deal. It's the same way I solve welfare. You don't want the government handing out money. The people, you should try to go to a street corner and put $500 in the air and go, government handed money, and they're like, you know what, we're covered. The church loves us.
The Christians already been here.
Yeah, they've already been through. Nobody wants you here. Yeah, that's how you get the government out of stuff. And frankly, this is how you handle the Bill Hybels problem, and you handle all the other issues that we're worried about that, like, I might get really upset about and feel like we lost. Like we were making some gains because we had a cool person doing cool things, and then it failed, and I'm upset. But, like, they're not my gains, and there's a way to overwhelm this problem, and it's by getting off your tuchus.
Yeah. I maybe that's the point of the night. The point of the night is like the Hybels don't make a big deal if the rest of Christianity is out there whooping tail.
Yeah.
And that's not what's happening, right? Like, we find people to get behind, and they were like, good, somebody's rocking.
It's because we freaking outsourced to Hybels.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we did. We outsourced to the mega church pastor. We outsourced to the worship leader and the band and whoever was coming through town. And we said, boy, I support them because of what they're doing for Jesus. And like, here's what would happen is if you're discipling people, right? I'm confident this is true of people that I've spent any significant discipling relationship with. They hear this thing about Bill Hybels, they don't go, oh man, maybe this Christianity thing is bogus, or maybe it perverts people, or like, how did the church even permit this? They go, boy, that's not Christianity, right? It would not occur to them.
Right. That's humanity.
That's right. Like, oh, I get that. I might even be susceptible to those types of things because I'm a human. Pray for that guy and let the Lord keep marching. Like, that's the thing. But if we're not overwhelming the masses with our boldness because we have the power of the Holy Spirit in our lives and the true and the reality of Jesus Christ and his saving grace for you, like, if that's the context that is not getting out there, then it's easy to let the Bill Hybels brush paint a picture. And it's false. Or Amy Grant. Or, God forbid, Red Collective.
Don't say it, Ben. Red Collective will not fall. Red Collective, Timmons, and the dudes from the Bible Project. They're going to sail on to glory.
Come take them away, Lord Jesus.
And Jeff Arendale.
And Jeff Arendale.
And Jeff Arendale. if he ever releases a CD with a song he's played in studio.
Victory is not on this one.
Yeah, yeah.
You know how many people were disappointed? My wife goes, that one's really not on a CD? I'm like, classic Arendelle. He puts out a tune everybody loves. It'll come out in 3 years.
I was going to say, 4 EPs from now, we'll see Victory.
Dang it, Arendelle.
His albums age like a fine lard. It's good for a bit,
Fine lard?
and then you can't keep it anymore.
I've never heard
You're looking
those two
for-
words in the same
You're
sentence.
looking to swap it out for something else.
Here's the deal. You were winning tonight. You said tinglers, and now a fine lard.
I have a way. So anyway, I thought so. I brought that up. Oh wait, one of the things he said that I thought that resonated with me is he said he ends up talking to Christians a lot because again he comes from that world. He's still got good friends and whatever. His wife's a Christian. Weird. It had to be an interesting union. And so, but one of the things he said was, I get to talking to a lot of Christians, and what I'm finding is that they've reconciled things about God or about Jesus, or about probably more specifically about the Bible, because that's generally where people's critique. They don't want to blame Jesus; they want to blame the Word.
Yeah.
And he said, look, do you know how many Christians are basically worshiping their own version of God? And I'm like, that's probably true. Mm-hmm. That's probably true where, like, there are things, he goes, that your version of Christianity sounds great, but, like, I don't actually see how it reconciles with Scripture. And that's true. I know a lot of people who believe a Christianity that I can't reconcile with Scripture that is more palpable to someone in who's in the maybes or in the nuns category, because the God's not offensive. He doesn't demand any type of loyalty. He doesn't really restrict anything that you do. If you love and you love who and you love other people and we all love each other, then generally it's not really a big deal. And so that's the thing. I think that is a fair critique. And I think that's where why it's important for you to take the Scripture as a whole. Because here's the deal. I think you're at least being honest if you go, look, I do not want to follow this God. That's at least honest. But like a lot of that's based upon classic antagonist tropes about things God did in the Old Testament, or inconsistency, or like I think he hates women, or all kinds of garbage. It's stuff that's not true. That like faithful people who are struggling and working through Scriptures, but who recognize the heart of God and trying to figure out how this document that's X thousands of years old is speaking true things in a way that we can otherwise recognize God's character. I get it. But those are reasonable questions that if you think that people of faith are not thinking through those, you're sadly mistaken. I don't know a man who doesn't go, hey, how should I understand this? But here's the thing. I think there's plenty of totally reasonable answers here. It's not like, oh, well, I can't put these two things together, so the thing's wrong.
The thing, though, is like I think almost everybody who's asking those questions has already been burned by a person representing Jesus, and then that's how they get there. Like, almost everybody I know that actually has an anger towards Christianity, or an offensive against Christianity, always points back to, it always turns out to be some person that they met at the church, or the way the church handled something, the people handled something, right? And then they use that as the starting block to start gaining evidence against God, right? To take it up that Yahweh is the cause of whatever sin was committed against them in the church at some point. Like, but it almost always starts with, a Christian treated me poorly, and then I backfilled it with God sucks.
So interestingly, there was an article by Robin Schumacher at the Christian Post. It said 8 years ago. Well, I'll just skip down in the middle here. I continue to see data suggesting that many people leave the church or consider it irrelevant because it fails to answer the tough questions that are thrown at it. I contacted the megachurch I go to about starting up an apologetics ministry. Because I'm formally trained in apologetics and theology, I offered to spearhead it and help train a volunteer staff who could serve as a group ready to answer people inside or outside the church who struggle with questions about Christianity. I spoke with 5 campus and connection pastors about it, and also offered to teach formal culturally relevant classes at the church where these issues could be openly discussed. This time, I was the one who got the shrug of the shoulders response, or simply ghosted on email. So earlier it said that there was a friend of hers or something who was trying to make connections with like all the churches in the city to offer like a youth apologetics thing, and like nobody was interested. So this person tries it again, and same thing. The fact is, it's ugly out there and it's getting worse. Data from Barna Group has identified a number of disturbing trends that should cause all Christians concern. Gen Z teens are much less likely to assert religious identity than generations before them, with a rise in espoused atheism also being witnessed. Almost half of practicing Christian millennials believe that evangelism is wrong. That's bogus. We're skipping. Okay, you know what? I'm done with this article. Because we read that, and that wasn't that wasn't the right context. And so, as an apologist, if you're using that to try to get me to believe something, and I know that's not true, we're done with you. Okay. Hey,
You know
on
what's
that.
funny about those articles
What?
is that once again they insinuate that these things are your problem, right?
Like my problem?
Well, like in general, you say when we were talking about Hybels, right? Like or doing well, we're like these are we were doing well, we were making gains. They're
Yeah.
God's gains, right? Like, and if 48% of the Gen Z whatever teens are don't blah 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 evangelism, automatically the church machine goes back to their group and goes, we got to be more relevant. We got to figure out a way to straighten this up. We gotta come up with a new banner. We got to get a new logo up and running, right? Like we come up with all these stupid things, right? And like it's always been the same thing. All the thing is always the same thing, right? Like it's always doubling down on Jesus and watching him do things. And so like not to say that like you can't double check and make sure that your sermon series haven't become some whitewashed tomb of a delivery system, right? But at the end of the day, they're God's people, right? And if you're following Jesus and your church is following Jesus, then it will invite other people to follow Jesus in the way that it works.
Buva, what are your thoughts on that?
So, I agree with it entirely. I think ultimately, if we're trying to look at our outreach and figure out how we can be more relevant as a church and as an organization, instead of actually trying to figure out how we can be more relational with people and actually build people up, that's a problem. If we're focused on what our sign is, if we're focused on the newest building, if we're focused on what's our light show look like on Sunday morning, or do we have the most relevant band, or are we dealing with the most recent music that's come out? Like, are we doing that? That was not a problem that was put out by the church as it was intended. That was not an issue that was meant to be solved by people trying to develop a show or an event for people to come to. Our job in creating people that are in shepherding people that are on fire for Jesus is to literally live our lives the way that we're supposed to, continually follow Christ ourselves, push for that as best as we can, be biblically sound together as communities, and then people see that kind of stuff and they watch people that love Jesus truthfully and honestly and fully, and then they can't help but go, dude, what is wrong with you? Why are you doing that? Francis Chan, why did you leave a megachurch to go start house churches? And then why were you called again to move randomly to a small country in Asia to do that when you were effective over here? Like it's confusing to people.
Right. As far as we thought, he was making gains here.
Right, exactly. And that's the kind of thing we look at. We see what we think is effective. We see what we think is the right way to do things. And rarely ever do I see people truthfully seeking the heart of God through scripture and through prayer and through correct community. That's rarely happening. One of the three, maybe. Prayer, okay. I'm sure there's plenty of churches that are praying hard, and I'm not saying that's a problem, but is it backed up by you having a legitimate relationship with God that you're listening on and following on? Are you finding yourself in a place where you're living out the way that the church was called to be? When was the last time you as a church looked at what the church is supposed to be rather than what you think it needs to be?
So let me ask you this though, because like the church gets a lot of internal, at least, conversation about not making Sunday morning a show,
Yeah.
right? But like, even the premise of it is set up that way, right? Like
yeah.
the stage is lit,
Absolutely.
the crowd is dark,
100%.
The music shows up, then you go away,
Right.
and then and like we give you the donuts and the coffee, and
Yeah.
like and you're quiet
It's
when you're
meant to-
supposed to be quiet, and so like, is there? It can't all just be that. It can't be all just the way that we have it set up that's causing that parts of that issue. I don't think it's actually causing that much of that issue. I think it lends to it.
Right, yeah,
It's a little
absolutely.
bit because I mean we do the exact same thing at a play or a concert.
We
right?
do
It's
not
all
even-
the same way. Crowd's dark, show's light.
Yeah.
Wham! We're good to go. And so it's almost a Pavlovian response in people that like, hey, I'm here to be entertained.
I think we try and develop the attraction of Jesus. Like we are the ones who feel like we need to create the most attractive Jesus possible. By making that show, or even if it's not just the show on Sunday morning, if it's the church in general, how do we make ourselves more relevant and attractive to our community versus how do we just love our community? It's not about coming to our church, and it's not about coming to our building. It's not about coming to where we congregate. Go and do things. Focus on how you're loving your neighbor. Like legitimately, I'm not just trying to call upon that scripture. The person who lives next to you, do you have any idea who they are? Have you spent any amount of time with them trying to get to know them? And I'm not talking about going over to their door, knocking on it, handing them a pie and going, Jesus loves you. No, seriously, get in the nitty-gritty and be vulnerable with them and try and develop a serious relationship with them. If you are constantly trying to create relationships with people that are meaningful because all you can do is hold the candle and the flame of God's glory and the message of God and run with that in your life and are constantly trying to love people the way he did sincerely, which is a crazy and reckless love. I don't think we do that well. I think we come up with cool events and we come up with cool things and we even come up with cool ideas that are, hey, let's help the homeless or let's help the poor or let's put a clinic together, whatever. But if you're not living... Right. Yeah. But if you're not doing these things from the perspective of like, it's literally your day-to-day. It is your daily thing. It's not about what am I doing for the next big thing in 3 months. It is... When I walked out of my house this morning, was my heart for the people around me instead of myself? Was my heart for everyone on my block to recognize that I have good news that is the message of Jesus Christ being a salvation that they can attain that I am currently holding on to? Why am I not running through my streets screaming that to people? Obviously not literally doing that. Don't do that. That's freaky.
I'm not.
But like, cool.
thought.
If that's what you want to do, awesome.
Dan, cancel the screaming for next week that you and I had planned.
When Jesus is shown throughout the New Testament, throughout what we've seen in history, is people that are literally putting feet to the ground, that are constantly following Christ in their day-to-day, by themselves, their self, their family, they're developing that, they're developing a community around them, and then that group of believers is able to go out and change and revolutionize things around them.
Here's where I think we do, though, because I don't disagree with anything you're saying, although what we do... Anytime the more people are involved, we institutionalize everything, and it's not
you got to herd the cats.
Yeah, suddenly this is the process and this is how we do it. Whether it's lights up or lights down, or air conditioner on or off, hard seats, soft seats,
right?
Homes, cathedrals. I mean, wherever no matter
there's a process
we just
to it
do that.
everywhere.
It's our humanness or
Right.
Americanness. I don't know what it is.
Agreed.
Yeah, and I think it's how do you keep it fresh? How do you keep it genuine? Because you can even
I agree with that word,
Yeah,
genuine.
Yeah.
Fresh,
Even run
I'm not
into your
worried about.
neighbor
Genuine, I
and
care about.
Bringing Jesus can be institutionalized.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, it's like
Oh, right. The Mormons are still knocking on doors and they're all
Yeah,
saying the
yeah,
same
yeah.
thing.
Same outfit,
Agreed.
same bike.
So
Agreed.
it all starts from a good spot, but we just screw everything up.
Oh yeah,
as
no, I'm
humans,
not saying the
you know?
intention
Now, hold
is
on.
wrong.
Right.
This is where you
So-
need to listen to the prophet Tim Timmons, where he says things.
Oh no.
He says things like, "Love through me," right? Like a lot of it is on. This is the problem. Like when we talk about the Gen Z teens who don't know blah 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 blah, we start coming up with our own ideas. Right? Here's what we're gonna do. Blah 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 blah. And like at its core, you are a vessel for God's love to other people.
Yeah.
You're not producing the love.
Right.
This is where we tend to miss it, right? We have to produce blah. Instead of saying, God, through me, do this, right? Do whatever you want to do. I'll do whatever you're doing. You do it through me, right? Then it stays genuine because it's God's in the first place.
Yeah.
It never was you, right? Like, here's the thing, is I know that I cannot conjure up a close, gritty relationship with my neighbors. I can't do it. I'm not designed for it. It's not my personality. I can't do it. But God, through me, can certainly do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I can't do it on my own. And so you'll get half the crowd that goes, I'm not doing that because that's not me, right? And the church, when they're missing it slightly, will put it as a personal call on your life, as if it's your job for you to go over and roust up your neighbors and reach out to your community. And then what you have is a bunch of God's people going, no, I'm not designed for that. You know who's designed for that? Bill Hybels. Seems like he rocks it. Right, like I'm not designed for this, right? But then if you change it so it's a heart attitude, right, where you're like, look, God, will you just love through me, right? Help love these people and do it through me. I'm open to it. You do it through me. Then it's not your problem because it's not you that's producing the love. The love is coming from Christ, where it's supposed to be sourced. And I think it's a humility issue, is what I really think that it boils down to.
When we started that church in Zimbabwe a few months ago, a part of the process was we had a revival this weekend, and we said we're going to throw a feast, and we want people to come to the feast, right?
Yeah.
And the church took that as like, awesome, we're getting a treat from the Americans. And I kept saying, no, this is for the community. You know, bring your friends, bring your neighbors. This is to
Right.
bring people. We want to feed them some food, give them a good, honest meal, good, solid meal.
Right, yeah.
Because you haven't had one forever. And then they get to hear the gospel, too. And it was hard even there. You know, that's so it's not. I can't even blame the Americans. It's
No,
just-
agreed.
It was hard even there for them to get. But this is for us. You
Right.
know, like God has blessed us. God is. I mean, and they were so appreciative, and their hearts are so good.
Of course.
But even there, I was surprised to see there was a block. Like, well, they'll come at some point after we eat.
They haven't earned
Right.
this.
You know?
After we have a little
I
something.
mean-
You know, so as you guys were talking, it made me think about even the crux of the story was, like, is it a problem that you have 50% of Gen Z folks who go, look, the church is irrelevant, or Jesus is irrelevant, Christianity is irrelevant. Yeah, that's a problem. But you notice we tend to try to solve it intellectually. That was the point this person was ultimately going to make, right? Like, we need to talk about more apologetics. But here's the thing, is if you are seeing that in people around you, the lack of an answer to a big question doesn't cause you to say it's irrelevant. It's because you have no connection to it at all.
Yeah.
There are plenty of things, even within Christianity, where I'm like, God, I'm just not sure. I'm not sure I understand this well. And maybe it's something that I won't ever understand, or maybe it's something I'll get a little bit later. But, like, I'm not going anywhere because my relationship with God and the community He's surrounded me with, and the notion of true biblical word is something I'm very familiar with and I find reliable. And so the presence of those types of questions, the presence of a question is not indicative of the presence of a problem. The only time that you then blame that on Christianity and say this is a problem that we can't answer this is not because there isn't an answer. It's because there's no one there telling the answer. And it's the body that is way more of a problem than the words that support it. There's all kinds of people who know, who aren't near as enlightened as myself and Buva, who know 90% less of what I know about Scripture, and it does not bother them a wick. They don't care. Their love for Jesus, and they're kicking tail out, serving people, and probably shaming me in certain areas of following Christ. Right? And my knowledge, my extra 90%, although it contributes to the way that my gig is to serve the kingdom, is not helping in those areas. And it's not necessary for those. But those guys, for lack of, you can, hey, what about God and the Canaanites? Say below, well, I know God is good. I've seen it. So I trust that He'd be good. I'm not satisfied with that answer, but part of my gig is to not be, is to try to understand and tell the story a little bit deeper and correctly. But bless that man. And it's not, he's not going, oh, this is a problem, I'm leaving the church. And so we just need to be careful that when we look out at the world and go, look at all these problems that people are having connecting with their faith, it is 9 out of 10. I'm going to go 99 out of 100. It's the presence of a human loving and following Jesus in their life, and not the intellectual answer, and not whatever other thing that they think the church is supposed to step up on, a political message, or how they're working in the funding of whatever organization you love or don't love. I'm just telling you that the presence of a faithful Christian in their life is the thing that changes that conversation from a none to I have questions. And so as we look at ourselves as a body, as a faithful followers of Jesus, and we look at our communities around us and we go, dude, what should we do as a church? If it means, hey, we need more answers, and we don't have bodies to share them, then no, I think you've missed the boat here. The answers will come. God will provide answers. But He's already providing people. The question is, are we being faithful to the call to be the people to do it? And I think that's more the risk than everything else. We don't need more. It's not another sermon series. It's not another apologetics ministry. It's not necessarily better handouts and flyers or free Bibles. You solve the people problem first. We'll figure out the Bibles. We'll get more Bibles, no problem. The Word of God will preach. I'm not worried about that at all.
That's true. It spread like wildfire with very little Bibles.
That's what I'm saying.
Back in the day.
What did Jesus say? The harvest is plentiful. The Bibles are few. The harvest is plentiful. The answers are few.
Yeah, those second hesitations.
The harvest is plentiful. The workers are few. It's always a people problem. And here's the deal: we should expect no less. The Lord creates the world, and He goes, "I'm going to send my co-manager. I'm going to send the person who is to represent me in the world. My image, my idol, is what I will create to rule over the earth." The Lord is always about handing out a responsibility to humans created his image and likeness to do as he would do. And so do not try to turn that over to a sense of an idea or a sense of an advertisement or whatever. And here's the thing: the people problem. You solve the people problem. I don't give a flying whip what you're doing on a Sunday morning. To be honest, I don't care your format. I don't care how many songs you play. I don't care whether you meet in a house or whether you meet in a live giant church got 50,000 people in. Don't care. If the people thing is being solved, and the people thing gets solved when we preach true things and we pray faithfully and the Holy Spirit does the work, right? So it's all bundled in that. But like that's where the format becomes irrelevant to me, because none of those things preclude people being faithful to Jesus when the thing is over.
No, that's true. Everyone, you got a problem like if they have the people problem handled, and a guy goes, "Man, we like to do lots of fog at our place." Cool. That sounds sweet.
Fog it up, man. I don't
We
care.
like to have 6 conga players. I love 6 conga players. I think that sounds great, right? Just like one family tends to have Taco Tuesday night, all churches look like they're doing this crazy thing different. And like, it doesn't actually matter. Nobody actually cares. We spend all our money on speakers. I think that was dumb, but I'm glad you love it, right? We're still preaching Jesus, and people are still out there loving other people. That's great. That's exactly what we want.
No, so that's the question, though, is that like, would I, of all the things that I don't count as a pastor, I don't count attendance, I don't count money, I don't count like things that otherwise nobody wants to be counting, but frankly, you just end up doing it. What I do care about is the engagement of people. Are our people engaged? And not on Sunday morning. I mean, whatever. You may or may not listen to me. That's you talk. Take that up with the Lord. I have a job. Past that, it's not really my responsibility. But like, are people getting involved in other people's lives?
Right.
Are we doing the people thing? And if we're not doing the people thing, then maybe what I'm teaching isn't right. Right? Maybe how much time we're spending in prayer on a Sunday morning isn't right. Maybe how I'm encouraging you and leading you as a pastor is not right. That's a gauge for me. Past, like, all the other stuff are intangibles, but people's, because I think almost all these things are people problems. And so and they get solved by people actively engaging in the work of Jesus, being Jesus to a world that needs it. And then it's weird to say, look, the truth of the Bible is peripheral. I mean, it's not, because that's how I understand who Jesus is. But to be honest, people work is what leads to you being able to communicate the truth of the Bible. It just is. And the people are willing to listen to that conversation because you're doing people work. And so I don't say people work is stronger than spiritual work. That's where you get into weird people who are talking where the prime banner of the church is social justice. I think the church should be all about social justice. I think you should care for the environment. I think you should otherwise help people in need. I think you should care that people are being mistreated and justice is being done. Absolutely. I'm in. But the people of Jesus should be on that anyway. We should be on the welfare problem. We should be on out of control Medicare cost. We should be on it, and not through the means of what you think. We should just be on it. And so, but what do we lack? We don't lack words. People talk about that crap all the time. We lack initiative. We lack body. We lack boldness. We lack putting our time and money and faith into the things that Jesus otherwise might want done, so they may reflect the world His image and likeness, and know that He is good and that people are saved. And that if we can't manage the world in that way, that's where we're biffing it. Everything else is the secondary thing, and it's important things. Don't hear me wrong. But like, if we're not hitting that thing, I feel like the other stuff, you're probably spinning your wheels, because you may have all the right answers, but no one's willing to listen to you. It didn't do you any good.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Dear Life from the Path, I need some help. A terrible car accident happened in front of my house a few months ago that resulted in the death of a husband and father. The family comes out every Sunday to place flowers at the accident site, which is my front yard.
Oh, no.
At first, I had no problem with them expressing their grief and tried to console the widow every time I saw her. The problem is, she has gradually added to the area a memorial stone, an angel statue, vases, and some of her husband's belongings. My front yard is beginning to look like a graveyard, a tacky one. Now she's asking to place a protective shelter over the site. I don't know how to respond.
Oh.
My husband is threatening to go and pull everything up as it is. To add the stress of all this, another fatal accident occurred last month, resulting in the death of a 22-year-old. He was the son of one of my children's teachers. I can't imagine what she must be feeling right now, passing our home and seeing the graveyard out front. It must be heartbreaking. We live on a dangerous road and we are petitioning for changes, but I don't want to make our front yard a spectacle. Grieving in the Midwest.
That is difficult.
Yeah, at the beginning I was totally all for, hey, you should just be a nicer
Yes.
person. But like as it continued,
It was the shelter.
yeah,
It was the tabernacle that
it
did
was
it.
totally it. Yeah. Oh man.
And this is on their property or just outside their property?
Looks like it was on their property.
I think it's on.
I mean, there are problems you're just not prepared for.
Where do you live, on Dead Man's Curve? Why are people
Right. Why?
walking
2
around
people
so
have
bad?
died on your street.
Holy cow.
Okay.
How long has it been?
Months.
Months has been. I'd say give it a year and then cut it off. Say, hey, sorry.
Yeah, a few months ago is when the accident happened.
Right. That's
communicate with
fair.
them.
Would you let her build the shelter in the interim?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I say that having it not actually, taking place in my life right now.
It would be difficult to say no.
It'd be really.
I think I
hard.
would feel like a real jerk face. But well, okay. So let me just tease this out just a bit. So the one lady finds solace in the vases and the marker and whatever.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything that says that the teacher whose son died would not otherwise. Like, people do that all the time on roads. They
Right.
put up the crosses and stuff. And some have obviously been there a long time. And so I don't know that I would worry so much about that. Like,
the second person's reaction.
that's right. She's devastated. That teacher's
Yeah.
devastated because her kid is dead, not because. And it's not
Right.
like she needs that memorial to go, oh, yeah, I had a son that recently died. She's thinking about it all the time. So I get it. There's a practicality to it, but I wouldn't sweat that so much. I think the core question is, and you don't have the relationship with this woman to speak something helpful to her life, like, hey, man, you might be overdoing it in this area. Like, I'm not sure it's healthy for you to have pitched a tent Jonah style over this thing.
I mean, do we generally let grief play out in any healthy way that it can? Right? Like,
Yeah.
this is not a destructive way. It's obviously
Right.
memorializing. It's over the top, right, from an outsider's perspective. But, like, it's not harming them. It's not harming you, really. It is ugly, but, I mean...
Okay, I know what I would do. Here's
Okay,
my
Dan's
official
ready.
advice.
Okay.
All right. I would call a meeting and get this family here and say I fully appreciate and I am sorry for your loss. And I would bring in a landscaper and say, let's design together. This is our property, by the way, but I also want to honor this person's life.
Mm-hmm.
Can you help me? Let's create a permanent something that in my property I can appreciate, but you can also appreciate
That's
in
fair.
memory of your.
That's a great idea.
Let's set out a rock
Yeah.
garden or
And
something.
we'll have
Yep.
a landscape
That is
person.
the most generous, loving thing
Yeah.
I could think of to do.
That's
Because I
totally
need to be
fair.
able to live here,
Yeah.
Right.
and you need to be able to honor
Well,
your and remember
Right,
your.
and if it's
person.
if it's a nicely trimmed hedge or something, opposed to flowers that keep going bad,
Right.
and garbage and LED lights and whatever,
something that can stand.
yeah,
that's a
Well, and
great
I think there's
solution.
something cool to be said about that too. Is you're building a relationship with that person.
right.
Like you said, I don't have the relationship to talk to that person.
Right.
And go, hey, build it.
Mm-hmm.
I know, I know that I'm advocating for something that's not that cut and dry and easy, but like
I don't know.
that's an easy way to, or that's an interesting way to do it. It's like, hey,
It's a conversation. Say,
Absolutely.
hey, I will have the final say. It's my property, but I really want your input.
Yeah,
and want
absolutely.
to honor your loved
yeah,
one.
we'd love to set something up for him. We're it's so terrible.
Yeah.
Get the mom in on it too.
I like that. I like that, Dan. That's a good
Thank
idea.
you. Thank you. I'll be here all day.
Okay, let's see what Secular says. Secular says, you are obviously a caring person or you wouldn't have allowed this situation to have gone as far as it has.
Oh, no.
It won't be a pleasant conversation, but the time has come for you and your husband to talk with the widow together and explain that while you sympathize with her devastating loss, you prefer your yard not to be used this way. You have that right. It's private property. Suggest to her that there may be some other way to memorialize her husband, but you need the stone and other objects removed within a reasonable time frame. You may also want to check with your local officials to see what the laws are about this.
Yeah.
Yep.
Jeez.
Call in the government.
Exactly.
Yep, bring
Let's
in the
get
old constable.
Let's get the 5-0 on it.
Lady just lost her husband. Would just well write her up for citation.
Wasn't it husband and son?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I think it was a husband and father, so it was the same
okay,
guy.
gotcha. Okay, got it.
Your memorial is gaudy and outside of code.
See,
Oh,
once again,
man. I called the city planner. He's not excited about the usage and zoning.
This is a people
He's sorry
problem.
for your loss.
This tabernacle is not specifically okay. It needs to have 4 specific walls and an entrance and a fire extinguisher.
we cannot do anything one-to-one anymore. We crowdsource everything.
Yep.
Right? Like, hey, I need to go talk to this lady about putting these statues on my lawn. I'm going to bring some backup with the law. Right? Like, you just can't have a reasonable... Now, after it went poorly, then you're like, okay, like, what's the Christians who ain't following no more, right? You do a one-on-one, they don't listen to you. You get a couple more dudes,
Right.
they don't listen to those guys. You get everybody, right? Like, it's an escalation, but, like, we can't do that. There's people that can't decide what restaurant to go to without crowdsourcing Snapchat. Hey, man, what restaurant should I go to? Seriously, how did you get your shoes on?
Hey, don't you
right?
judge me.
Like, I don't understand how you can have I think it leads to just this massive insecurity all the time. If I don't ask everybody, I will land on a thing that's no good. And the point is like the thing that you land on is good because you landed on it. It was good enough. Right? But you don't want to be missing out on this or that or whatever. Some guy knows one thing and the bouncer that lives over here and he'll get you the table by the plants or whatever stupid thing you think you're missing out on. I think it's way over the top. People won't do nothing on their own. Hey, I went to go talk to the neighbor. Their dog was pooping in my yard. I said, hey, man, we got to put the end to this. Oh, man, sorry, that dog's rambunctious. Okay, I'm on it. I'll take care of it. Done. But they don't. They're like, I called the sheriff, and me and the sheriff went over there, and we wrote him a note, and we sent him emails and whatever. It's terrible. I just don't understand it. It's ridiculous.
It's so weird, right? That like the fear of missing. It's ironic, I guess, that the fear of people are constantly missing out, based upon their fear of regret of missing out, right? Like I don't want to miss out on the best thing, and so I'm going to crowdsource the thing and try to get this opinion or that opinion, and I might miss out on having actually done the thing at all because I was waiting to hear what everyone else was going to do or what they think I should do. All right, so yeah, that was terrible advice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, talk to the lady. I like that. But, how callous is to go, it's been enough time? I mean, I can't imagine 5 years, 10 years, 20 years is enough time to have lost your spouse in a way that was unexpected.
Right.
Right? It's not enough time.
Yeah.
And so that's a bad premise. Dan's done a beautiful thing here.
I agree.
That's fantastic.
All right, you want to do one more?
Yeah.
Then that's it. Dear Life from the Path, my father, although a well-meaning and caring man, often speaks before he thinks. The way he phrases things can come up across as harsh, uncaring, or rude. This guy seems all right.
I say, is this one of your daughters?
Mike?
My husband is a sensitive person who was badly bullied in his youth,
Yep,
so he
Mike.
doesn't feel comfortable around my father and takes most things he says as insults. I've tried talking to both of them without success and even involved my stepmom. My father and stepmom are coming for a visit, and I can't get it through my father's or my husband's heads that the only way for them to get on the same page is to talk. My husband can't understand why I see common ground between him and my father is too oblivious to realize the depth of the problem. The two most important men in my life cannot communicate. What can I do? Wow. I'm confused.
Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not really much you can do.
The
That's
father's
truth.
he's a sharp, handsome guy that speaks his mind. Okay, he's all
Sharp
right.
and handsome.
The husband is a sensitive person who was badly bullied in his youth, so he doesn't feel comfortable around my father and takes most things he says as insults. I mean, you explained the problem right there. He's taking things as insults, whether they were meant as insults or not.
Yeah. I mean, what we call things as you see them. Do what it says and go, hey, sir, that was offensive. And just you don't have to internalize it. You can recognize offensive things without them applying to you. Hey,
Yeah.
that's not true about me. It's weird that you would say that.
So, like, this is the
Even
hard
if
thing.
it is true, deal with it. It's okay.
This is the hard thing to explain to
You
your
can take
kids,
criticism.
right? Like you have they ride home on the bus, and there's this kid on the bus who's just a constant jerk. He's just an absolute jerk. At the age of 5, he's a terrible kid. Just causing all kinds of ruckus. And the kids say he's bad, he's mean to me. And then as a parent, you're like, now listen, people don't just have this, right? Like most people who are what's Dan always say, hurting people hurt people, right? And so most of this is sourced from somewhere, so you have to try to get above the situation, take yourself out of it, and look at the person and go, this is probably why they're acting the way that they are. I need to have some grace for this, right? But the problem is if you do that in an adult context, it makes it feel like you're the better person, right? Because you're analyzing the other person instead of taking them at just face value as two people have a relationship. You're saying, I can see above this. I can see what you are and how you got there, and I'm going to try to change the way that I interact with you based on that. So the oblivious dad with the big mouth, he doesn't get to just be that way because that's how he's always been, right? You can take into account that the husband's a little sensitive. You got to just watch what you say, right? There's no reason for your ways to be just accepted, and he has to grow to that. But on the other hand, the husband has to look at it the exact same way. That guy's a little bombastic. He's probably not meaning to bust your chops. He just talks to everybody that way, and so you're taking it in too heavy. And so if they're not willing to do that, young lady, you're stuck between two stubborn men, and I'm not sure you're going to mend that fence, right? They're just both being stubborn is at the end of the day. They're
Right.
stuck in their ways. I want to be sensitive. I want to be a brash dude that just says whatever the heck I want, and I'm not willing to move either way. I want to be insulted. You're basically begging for it, right?
This is probably weighs more on the sensitive guy than the other guy. The other guy is just what he is, right? And I
Yeah.
guess the sensitive guy is too, but he just needs to grow up here and just like, you know what, you just have to learn how to not let stuff bother you. But still, she can't do that for him.
Right.
You know, we had a couple weeks ago, a family member came to church with some family from an extremely hardcore conservative church background, and this guy managed to, survive through our, liberal music with drums and our just, he survived everything.
Right.
And at the end of the service, he came to me and said, "You're ashamed of Jesus." And which at the time I was talking to someone about their relationship with Jesus, which was kind of interesting.
Right.
And he said, yeah, he did finish it. He said, "You're ashamed of Jesus. His name's not on your sign." And he was trying to get me mad. He was trying to hurt my feelings, to do something to somehow get. And I'm just kind of smiling. I said, "I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people who would, have a different opinion of that." And no, you're ashamed of Jesus, blah, blah, blah. And I just turned away and kept talking to this gal, and he finally got frustrated and left. It's like, later on, they were like, did my dad, attack you? And I said, I mean,
Yeah.
I guess he thinks so.
Yeah, right.
I don't know. I mean,
It sounded like he gave it a shot.
and someone else was saying, he goes, "Oh, Dan, he can handle that stuff." It's like, I mean, it was funny and sad, but it didn't affect me. There's a lot of people it would affect, and they got to learn to not let it affect them. I guess that's my whole point of that story.
Right.
Is that was on me. That was on me to decide if that was going to ruin my day or ruin my life, or all of a sudden, oh, everything I've done is terrible, I'm ashamed of Jesus, or say, this guy's, man, he's a little cranky and probably needs to eat.
Yeah.
I
Right.
mean,
Maybe I'm the sensitive guy. That would wreck me.
Yeah. I mean, Buva, you don't have to date every jackanapes that shows up at the door.
I mean,
Date it? What?
And say they knock on the door and says, "Hey, you want to go out?" No, I choose not to go out with you. You're difficult, and I don't give that any credence.
Fair enough.
That's what, like, it's people offering, like, we misunderstand a conversation. When people start talking to you, it's an offer. It's an offer to take that in.
do you want to dance?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh,
Nope.
man.
My
Not
dance
dance.
card's full with people who aren't nuts.
I feel like I've developed my personality to be something that's so extroverted that I can't even imagine what that's like. And it's one of the total pitfalls that would wreck me. But yeah, no, absolutely. And it's funny because people make fun of me all the time, and it doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
For some reason, that would just mess with me. I don't know.
Well, I mean, there's enough evidence to say I'm not ashamed of Jesus.
Oh,
Yeah, right.
That,
yeah, I'm not sensitive. Like, people call me fat on a daily basis. Like, people have literally driven up to me to call me fat before. It's really funny. I've been working out on the walking, and people will pull up to me and be like, "Hey man, what's up, fatty no friends?" And I'm like, "Hey buddy, I'm
Wanna
gonna
see
flip
my
your
friend?"
car." Yeah, exactly. It's like, "Hey, you know that I'm bigger than your vehicle? Yeah, you're calling me fat. I could flip it. Like, we could do this if you'd like to, and that wouldn't bother me." But like, man, that's me.
That is
Well, I'm glad
crazy.
it didn't.
Boy, it really is. It's more sad than anything, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I can sum up your entire relationship with Jesus based on whether you wrote the Americanized English version of Jesus on your
Right.
sign. I guess.
Yeah, Jesus was the real name. Come on, man.
We better do secular advice. I'm sure it'll be harsh. and
Interested to hear
not
this.
caring at all. Dear everybody, secular says, continue to encourage them to talk to each other, but if you're not successful, accept that your father is an insensitive loose cannon who won't change. Limit your parents' visits and keep them short. Oh boy. When you know they're scheduled to be in town, help your husband to plan to be out of the house as often
Oh,
as possible.
jeez.
And if that doesn't work, arrange to visit your parents alone rather than have them visit you.
Yeah, because of course that's conducive for a great marriage.
Absolutely. Hey, my parents are coming into town. Don't you got a bowling league to be in? See ya. As much as you might want the two men in your life to get along, it just may not be possible. P.S. If the bullying your husband experienced as a child has affected his other relationships as an adult, he should consider getting therapy. It might change his life for the better. I mean,
I don't
that's
disagree
probably true.
with that
Yeah.
statement, but
Yeah.
Because the fact is, I mean, it's going to wreck him.
yeah.
And so she knows her husband well enough to go, it's wrecking my husband. It's like, as much as I think that's bad advice, it's like you can't tell him to just suck it up and take it because it's going to ruin the rest of his
Right.
next week,
I mean, to be fair, I know some loose cannons. They appreciate other loose cannons.
Yeah.
Right? Why don't you just call your dad up and be like, Dad, you got to shut up, man. You're
Right.
way too much.
Oh, that's totally fair.
You're slaying the room. You're making my husband feel like crap, and frankly, you're causing me a bunch of grief. Quit
That's
it.
fair.
Shut up, old man.
He'd go, "Oh man, your husband's kind of a wiener, but I suppose I can try to tone it down." See, like that, Dad. You got to tuck that up. You can't say crap like that. Otherwise, I'm going to have to limit the amount of time we spend together. Oh, I don't want that. Well, then shut up.
Yeah, you know, I've heard people have all kinds of complaints about some kind of person who's like set in their ways. But like, part of that is because you tolerated them being set in their ways.
Right.
Just be clear that you're not required to tolerate them, and like everybody can freaking change. Here's the deal. You ever met a guy, someone who's been married twice? Like they got married and then they married someone else. Now, especially if it's someone who's married for like a long time and they married somebody else, like parts of them change. They change. They picked up somebody else, and there's aspects of their behavior that starts to shift. And so this old dog, new tricks thing, not true. Not true. They can behave differently. And like just who I am is garbage. That's garbage. And so you just don't
A
have to
shock
accept
collar.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just get a little bit of a tase.
Dad? Yep, $18 on the net.
Why did it make the wind noise?
I know how to do a shock.
That's not a shock collar, Dan.
That's a whoopee cushion.
No wonder my dog
misunderstood.
my dog has no respect for me.
I thought they were connected.
Hey, you've been listening to Live from the Path. Hey, things you might call the complaint line on this week: 515-517-0085. 1, perhaps you love the get and go. That's a personal problem, but I'd like to know about it. We can pray about it.
Yeah.
Or you think there's a better gas station than the Quick Star. I mean, fight me. Call it 515-517-0085. Second of all, maybe we got this people thing wrong, right? We need to double up on the apologetics or whatever. Like, I'd be interested. Like, are you seeing this in your church? Do you feel like you're getting this right? And also, personally, like, if you need some prayer on this people thing, because, like, it's so easy to farm it out. It's so easy to point somebody else to it and say, well, my church is doing it. Bogus. We got to do it. And so maybe you're interested in that. Also, maybe we've given terrible advice. You think we should allow them to, do a feast of booze out there on the headstone and otherwise not rebuke the dad.
Yeah.
Whatever. You think we got it wrong? Let us know. 515-517-0085. In the meantime, while you're out there snuffing your complaints up, go leave some reviews on your favorite podcast app. Okay, iTunes, whatever the Android platform is, Google Play. Just say, look, I dig on Life for the Path. 5 stars. That's what I want.
We really can't accept. Can we make it so you can only choose 5 stars?
Nope.
Boy, that'd be great.
I know.
love that.
Yeah. It's a failed
Look,
system,
another
really.
one.
Yeah.
Anybody else? If you're considering voting for 5 or less than 5, I need to talk to you first. Like something about your life ain't going right. You've been listening to Live Path. We'll see you within a few weeks. Thanks for listening. In the meantime, be faithful means God will handle the ends. You've been listening to Live from the Path.